the Real Hustle Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Chris Kivlin. Real hustle, real people, real results. You can help support our podcast by checking out our Real Hustle gear. We have t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, hats, and more. The Real Hustle gear is great for the gym or even a night out on the town. Let everyone know that you are a real hustler willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. You can check us out right now at realhustle.com, and right now we're offering all of our listeners 10% off when you use the promo code podcast at checkout. Once again, that is podcast to receive 10% off your entire order. realhustle.com.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Oh,
good.
Doing great.
Glad to have you here. So, Robert and Kristin. So, Robert, why don't you kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself and as we get started?
Sure. Hey, happy to be here. This is exciting stuff for me. I always wanted to be an ESPN anchor, so this is about the closest I'm going to get. But this is really fun. Thanks for having us here. So, hail from New Jersey, and I lived there most of my childhood, and then I went to Penn State University after that, and really from there I kind of hopped around the country because by my very nature I'm an explorer, and I moved out to Oregon for a while, and somewhere along the way I came back to Penn State and I met Kristin, and then we escaped back to Oregon and spent some time out there, and eventually I didn't know really what I wanted to do with my life when I wanted to grow up. And sometimes you could say that that's still true. But basically I went to law school just because my dad went to law school. I said, well, I might as well go to law school, see what that's all about. And I did that, passed the bar exam, started practicing law. But the main thrust of my business became a title company. I had bought in a title company in Tennessee, and I basically developed that into a viable business. And at which point I really discovered that I enjoyed spending time in front of people, talking with people, bringing things together as opposed to ripping things apart, which I was doing too as an attorney, which had its own stories. So ultimately, my dad kept on saying, Bobby, he calls me Bobby. Everyone in New Jersey calls me Bobby.
So now we can call you Bobby.
You can call me Bobby. And Chi, if you're listening, that is from you. She always calls me Bobby. And she's on our team, and she's been on our team since the inception of the Casella group for the most part. But I ended up taking that legal background down here to get into commercial real estate. But the second I stepped foot in Florida, the recession happened, or the Great Recession, and the market collapsed. But I had already bought a home with Kristin here, and
Great times.
Yeah, it was great time. So I went to go work for Lennar during that time, not knowing what I was doing. And I remember thinking to myself, and this was a pivotal moment in my life, where I was representing murderers and things like that. And I went to baking cookies in a model home, Otis Spunkmeyer cookies, right? Wow. And I said, what happened?
Every day I say, how's the day going? I'm baking cookies.
I'm baking cookies. I mean, I became...
Were you baking cookies in the model homes?
I was. So I created that ambiance when they came in, and they, I would present the cookies to them, and they said, oh my gosh.
You're like a modern day Betty Crocker.
I was, and I was astonishing at it. And I was just utterly flummoxed that I was sitting there baking cookies. But I tell you what, it ended up being the best possible thing for me. I always talk about the obstacle is the way. I didn't know why I was there, but I kept on just doing the best I could in a difficult situation. And over time, I ended up being, one of the top agents there until I struck out on my own. And that's kind of how I got to this point.
So let's talk about Kristin.
Let's head over to the real show. Let's all focus on Kristin here, because I'm the extrovert and she's more of the introvert.
Yes, Robert is definitely the extrovert. I just try to keep up as best I can.
I just try to keep up, and so I think everybody's trying to keep up with Robert.
Well, we all know, and we should make a note here that when I first started hanging out with Chris, he wasn't big into hugs.
I knew this was going to come up.
You knew it was going to come up, and now we hug it out, regularly. But at the first time,
Should I
he
be
was
concerned?
no, he shouldn't be concerned. But he was so rigid the first time. He's like, "Oh my God, what is this guy doing?"
And I turned about as red as it is in here.
Don't worry,
was
that's
worth
the
it.
common reaction
So,
that
yeah,
Robert
so I was
gets.
like, what is this dude doing? I was like, I don't even know him.
This is the friendliest realtor I've ever seen in my life. But go on.
All right, so Kristin, tell us a little bit about yourself and
how I got to
Yeah.
this
Yes.
point.
Yep.
Well, I grew up in upstate New York, and I actually met Robert in college. I went to Penn State, and
I love Penn State, by the way.
I
Not to
love
cut you
Penn
off. The Creamery.
Oh yeah,
The
the
Creamery.
best.
The Creamery, because we're from Maryland, so like we had a friend of ours that went to Penn State. She's like, you got to come up and try the Creamery. The Creamery is the best.
awesome.
It was.
It's changed a lot. I went back there probably 10 years ago. I'm kind of divulging my age here, which was quite some time after graduation. It's changed a lot, but I love it. I love Penn State. So yeah, we met there. I traveled a little bit with him. We lived in Oregon, lived in Tennessee. I actually went to law school as well until I had my
Really?
son.
Okay.
And then
Is that how you two met in law school?
no, we actually met before that. We
Okay.
just he was studying, he would be studying, and I would start reading some of the case law. I'm like, this is really cool.
Okay.
I really like this. And then I realized I liked the study of law better than I liked the practice
of law.
Yeah. So I actually worked in legal for years. I worked for when we actually moved to Florida, I worked for Joe Law Group for years and ended up not only being a managing paralegal, but then worked my way up into being director of what was my exact title? Director of HR and admin. So I worked with the owner there for several years. So and then I wanted to do something on my own, and I at the time I was dancing, I was competing, I was in ballroom. I had actually gotten into that when we moved here to Florida as a way just to have something for myself, because at the time I was working really hard. I was an employee. I was a wife. I was a mom. And then I think at some point I just thought, God, I need something for myself. So I got into dancing. Actually, Robert, maybe not now, but bought me my first introductory lesson way back when. I'm sure he kicks himself now for doing that.
What was I thinking?
It is all your fault. So I competed for years, while I was working. Now, at some point, Robert and I decided, I would explain to him what I did for my boss at Jodat, and he'd say, I need a you. I need a you out with me. So I joined him in the real estate business for several years, but my goal was always to have my own business. I loved dancing. I knew I couldn't compete forever, and I decided that was going to be what I wanted to get into as a career.
So let me ask you this, because this is why I wanted to have you guys on here, because obviously you guys kind of have different passions but same goals. So what made you the goal of the dancing? So were you into dancing when you were a kid? Did you always know you wanted to be in dancing?
I didn't actually. I didn't even know you could have a career in dancing at all. I did some ballet as a kid, and I was on dance team in high school, but that was the extent of it. I actually got into ballroom dancing very late in the whole, in the industry. Most of these people get in when they're very young, or they're in their, my instructors right now are in their 20s, So, and they've been dancing for years already, versus I got started in my early 30s, so I got started late.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then you're a professional dancer, correct?
Correct.
So you travel all over the place, and
We travel, we compete, we have students, so we compete with our students. And then I now own the studio down in Northport. I have two partners with me, Ronald and Katie Gajen. Actually, Ronald was my dance partner for years, so I competed with him for
did not know
years.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how I got brought into the business, was through him and his wife.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how does so you dance. So how does this is the big thing that I really wanted to talk to you guys about. How does this work? Because I mean, I talked to you the other day and you were telling me, you were like, yeah, like sometimes I don't get home until 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm at the studio all day. You're a busy person. I know how successful you are in real estate. So how do you make it work? How does this all come together? You have kids, I mean, you know, and you got a household to take care of, and there's a lot of moving pieces in this now.
It's funny that you're asking us a lot of these questions because this year obviously has, I mean, I just opened the business in August of 2021. Mm-hmm. So it's been open for less than a year. And obviously Robert and I, you know, even for me, knowing what the expectations were getting into my business and the long hours, we don't start the business. We don't start our day until 12:30 and we go, our last lesson ends at 9:15 at night. And I live an hour away.
Right.
So, you know, both Robert and I have been kind of shell-shocked by all this, you know, like, gosh, we never see each other. What's happening,
right.
You know? So I think for me, and for, honestly, I don't know I can't speak for Robert, but for me, a lot of it is learning how to run my business in a way that I can get some time with my family. When I first got into it, I was trying to wear every hat, right. You know, and especially me not having worked in the business very long before I opened my doors, I was having to learn every role, you know, like how am I going to train other people in my business if I don't know how to do it myself? If I don't know how to, you know, bring in students, get them to a point where they're competing, you know, run the financials, you know, all the corporate stuff, all the compliance, all of that.
Right.
So I've been trying to learn all of these different roles, but I'm learning I have to leverage those things out. And I don't necessarily have to know all of the roles or do all of them well in order to have a successful business. It's kind of like finding the correct puzzle pieces to put the picture together.
And that's kind of what I wanted to bring up because, and this is why I think you guys were great for the show, is because I know like you're making it work. You're being super supportive with everything that she's trying to do. So for our listeners out there and people watching, like the thing is that I looked at is like, okay, well, you don't need to know everything, or like you'll figure it out as you go. Like, you know, and I've been through enough of this with me personally and Debbie, is like, you know, we kind of figure it out as we go. Like, but we're following our dream, our passions, whatever it might be, and we're supportive of one another. Because I think a lot of times what we see is that, and this is the tough part, it could split you and it could start getting to one another, right? And so Absolutely. Like you got to understand that it works for both of you and you're supporting each other. Because when I first got into, especially the mortgage business, I mean, I was working 7 days a week, nonstop, never really had time. I mean, I put a lot of time not having it for family because you got to be out there, you got to be pushing. And then I know, like, because, I mean, our jobs are very similar.
Sure.
You know, as far as mortgage and real estate. And then once you add this other component into it, it's like, whoa, you know. And it's tough because it's tough. It takes away from a lot of the stuff. But you figure it out. And then I think as you grow, you'll figure out, okay, we can make this work because we know what each other wants. Especially, I mean, I think you guys have been together for a long time, right? How many years now?
Yeah, we've been together since 1999 is when we met.
So quite a bit, yeah. So
quite a long time, yeah.
It's been a long time.
A long time.
I think the interesting part of this is, especially entrepreneurial minded. Kristin is that way. I'm that way. And when I first went into real estate, just like you, it was 7 days a week. It was 10 hours a day, and I was like, I had to go. I was going out. I was starting real estate and general real estate. I knew no one, so I just had to basically build my business. So I was really unbalanced. So she would be essentially taking care of everything at home. I was totally inaccessible.
And working full time.
Totally inaccessible, and that was tough on her. And I always used to be like, well, honey, I'm doing the best I can. I'm making money. I need to, I need to put food on the table. That was always my statement. And now the roles are reversed. And now I see what she had to endure because it's been challenging for me. I've had to take on some of those things that she originally did. And
I had done it for years,
Yeah,
you know.
right.
So when he brings something up, I'm like, we're not even a year in, honey. You know?
I know. So when you say, how do we make it work? Well, it's been an adjustment for me, you know, and I've just tried to turn that on its head. Again, the obstacle is the way. Philosophically, that's really important to me. I try to put my mindset in that way when things aren't going the way that I would hope. So I've got to spend more time with Nicholas, and he's 16, so he's still in high school. So I've really turned that into spending more time with him. I've had to throttle down a little bit because I have a lot of the hats now, and Kristin's working a lot of the time. In fact, she's getting home at 10, 11 o'clock
Yeah,
at
last
night.
night I got home at 11. He goes, what time did you get home? I said, I don't know. When I get home, everybody's in bed.
Right,
You know?
yeah.
And that part's hard too,
Right.
you know, because I want to come home and see
See
everybody, and I
everybody,
feel
yeah.
like I missed it all. I get home and I'm like, oh, I missed everything that happened this evening, you know, whatever is happening for my son and his school, you know. But I know that as I get better with to your point, you know, you were saying you kind of figure it out. I know that over time, as I get better running my business and find ways to make it easier for myself and still, you know, still be successful in the business, still make money, I know that it'll get better. You know, so in the tough times, I just say it's gonna get better.
And that's the thing, especially the first year. The first year is always probably the most toughest. I mean, they say that 95% of the business first year falls apart, because if you can make it through that first year, then you've made more than most people have.
Sure.
Right.
Because, like, you know, that's the thing, the statistics are this there, because it's so difficult, and it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. I mean, you really do have to make it your passion, and you really do have to give it everything you got. I mean, like, you know, with real estate, just like as I know with mortgages, and even with this, I mean, you know, it's a lot of work, but you can, if you envision it to where you can say, okay, I see where this is going and where I'm going to get to, and it's your legacy too, right? I mean, so it's something that you can look at and say, look what I did. You know, if you look back on your life, this was something that I really wanted to do, and yeah, was it difficult, but I made it work.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the neat thing is this, is obviously, you know, real estate has been very kind to me, and it's been really rewarding. But I think what ends up happening is around the periphery of that work, you get to do fun things. Like for me, this was super exciting. Like this is not something that is in the ordinary course. So now I've got this microphone in front of me, and I feel all self-important, and I you know, I'm just grooving. I feel like I've got so much to say to the world.
Yeah. She's probably happy that she goes to work for 12 hours a day, just get away from you.
Yeah, I know.
She's like, oh my
'Cause
God.
I'm trying to hug it every time out with her. She's like, get away from me.
Go find somebody
Go
else.
find someone else. And I say, Chris.
I'm busy.
Well, I mean, I'm an introvert, and what I do,
Right.
and what I do all day is to create a positive space for people to come into,
Right.
and let loose their day. You
Right.
know, so my job is really to create that space for other people. But by the time I get home, you know, because of the way I'm built, my personality, I'm wiped out. I don't have anything left. So that part can be tough in a relationship, because he's waiting for me to come home, wanting attention and affection and talk or whatever, and I'm like,
I just want to go to bed.
I'm done. Like I can't do any more today.
Yeah, it's like the dogs come up, and then
Nope.
I'm coming up behind her. I have her,
Just
you know,
pay
scratch
attention to
behind
me.
my ear, and you know, it's
Right.
good. It's good. So.
So that part can be tough, and trying to recognize, like, you know, you have to look at it like the other person can't be the last on the list. You know, we've had discussions about that, and it's easy to make the person, your spouse, the last on the list because they're the most understanding person in your life, really the most supportive, you know. So it's
Great point.
nobody else can give me that leeway but him. And at the same time, that only goes for so long, because because we both have our own wants and needs from each other in a relationship. So I think it's you have to be careful with that. You can burn that out.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know that's the thing. It's like sometimes we take each other for granted,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
and it's funny because I sit here and I listen to you too, and it reminds me a lot about like Debbie and I,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because I would be the same way, right? So I would just be like, she's there, and I take her for granted because like she did everything, like and so. Now that I've become more established, though, I've been trying to be like, okay, let me be a better husband and let me help do more around the house. Let me like take the dogs out. Let me make dinner. Let me do some other stuff. And just because, at one point it was almost like it was expected. Like I just expected her to make dinner. I expected her to do this.
Yeah, sure.
And then the thing is, it's like, and then she's like, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, I need to kind of start helping. It was tough. It was tough at the beginning, but we had a conversation too at the beginning. I said, look, if we're going to do this right and I'm going to make something of it, I need you to understand that I'm going to be working all the time. I'm going to have to put in all these hours. I was like, because I want this to be life-changing, and eventually down the road, because I was tired of really not having money. We were broke, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, but if I'm going to do this right, this is what it's going to take. And so we sat there and we had that long conversation. There was many times it was tough. There was tears, and
had lots of those.
So it's like
Understand that.
and it's like but it's just you kind of work your way through it. And so like that's why because the dynamic of what you guys have, because I kind of like I said, I kind of know what you go through. You have a team that you're trying to mentor as well, and so you've got that on top of you just doing your own real estate. And so talk a little bit about that, because you're mentoring a team. So, and I know from even my mortgage world what it's like to have a team, because they always got questions. They've always got needs. So who's the first person they're calling? They're calling Robert.
Yeah, I honestly love that part of it. That is kind of new and exciting for me, because real estate, hey, I have a fairly decent handle on that. Obviously, there's always room for improvement there. I'm developing. I'm part of the mastermind with you, and I'm always trying to surround myself with people that are better than me and have wider perspective so I can improve as a person. And I really love that aspect. And I like to kind of download that information to my team. The first thing I tell new agents on my team, I said, the number one thing I want you to do is be better than me. I am your pace car, and I want you to exceed me. And when you exceed me, then, hey, you graduate, so to speak. And we have a really great culture on our team, but the balance of trying to understand, okay, I've got to run my business, and then I got to work on the business. That has been my biggest challenge, is downloading to them, making sure that they're successful, pouring everything I can into them, but also trying to keep my business going. And that balance is difficult, because I want to do everything at 100%, but I can't. I've got to split that. And it's been incredibly rewarding to see the successes on my group. It's immensely rewarding. In fact, more rewarding than the real estate aspect. So that's kind of my new thing that I really enjoy, the coaching aspect. I'm very serious about my work, but I obviously bring a lot of levity. I like to have fun. I like to smile. So that is the culture that I kind of surround myself with, and having a low-key but intense type arrangement when it comes to work. So yeah, I would say that the biggest challenge for me is learning how to balance in this new environment where I have the responsibility of the team aspect of things, and also keeping my own individual business going, with the intent ultimately being that I'd love to just have the ability to coach and run a team. That would be the end vision. I'm not there yet, but I'm taking steps to make that dream a reality. So
I got a question, because you used to be part of the team and used to do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. I'm assuming you don't do that anymore, correct?
I'm trying not to do that anymore. Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, so what happened there? Because that's another dynamic part of this relationship, right? Because you were doing what, like a lot of the listening stuff, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff.
All the behind the scenes stuff. So we had an assistant, and we lost an assistant when I first came on the team. And so I sort of assumed that role in addition to helping discuss like team decisions with Robert. But the goal never was for me to be an assistant in doing a lot of those things. And these were some of our own, we look back on it, it's like, God, we really kind of messed this up a little bit, because this is one of those things where we were afraid to leverage those things out. Yeah. We still struggle with those issues today, I'm like, Robert, you need a personal assistant. You need, we're not there yet. You have to do this for me before we can get to that point. Yes, I know. And here I am struggling to find time to get it all done. So it's really challenging. I'm having to figure out what these big rocks are that I have to move. And once I move those big rocks, then I have a sense of relief that they're done. But it impacts my relationship with Robert because, here I say, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to do that. And when I don't do it, I've broken the promise.
Right.
So that can create a lot of resentment between us, because he's needing me to get these done. He's counting on me to get these things done. And meanwhile, I've got another boat that has to go, another whole ship that has to keep moving. And when I get to the dance studio, whatever day I had planned, it has some semblance of that, because when the doors open, I can have people asking me any number of things, and I have my own team that I'm training, that I have to be there for. They're younger people. They're still getting established here in this area, So there's a lot of coaching going on in that department too. So it's so much responsibility sometimes that I have to constantly prioritize, and that can be tough because again. Sometimes he's the last one,
And I think one of the things that the mistake I made when she came out, I was like, it was almost like, oh, she's out. Okay, fix it.
Yes, I was the fire putter outer.
Oh, wow.
I was in such need of some kind of semblance because I'm somewhat of a tornado. I like to create things, and sometimes I leave a path behind me. And
they say a lot of people in his role are actually like that. So it's not uncommon to have that happen.
But I didn't, when she came on, I didn't utilize her talents in the right way. I totally dropped the ball. I just said, okay, fix everything. And she did end up evolving into, at least at the beginning, more of an assistant, which is exactly for
what
a relationship.
I did not want.
That was not the best thing for us.
That's what I was just going to say, because like Debbie and I have worked together, and it's tough. When you got a husband and wife, and first of all, when you see each other all day, and then it's I need you to do this, or hey, can you do this? And then it's like, okay, well, now I have to go home and be husband. Mm-hmm. Before it's like, okay, well, it's almost like, okay, you guys are working together, but it's still like you're the boss and she's the employee, right? And
which was not what I wanted when I went out with him.
And then
the
thing
intent
is,
was
like,
to run the business with him.
Right, and it's tough to do that, right? And so like, and so when you guys have to do that, and then it's like, okay, well, now I got to be husband and wife, and you're together all day, and then it's very hard to switch that, make that switch at the end of the day.
I remember him when I first came out into real estate sending me a text asking me to do something and writing TY, thank you at the end. It was very formal, but and I was like, what is this? What is this TY? Like, why are you talking to me like this? Like, because he had gone into almost like a boss role. I'm just learning
about this now. So this is great. This is actually turning into a therapy session. I had no idea.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was when I left the law firm, I was in a high position in the law firm. Right. I was managing people, and so when I joined his team or had come on to actually build a team with him, my intention was not to be his assistant. My intention was to build a team with him. And so, but we were so afraid to leverage those components out. And I think Robert just looked at it like, well, she's good at all these hats, kind of similar to what I'm learning in my own business. Well, she's good at all these hats. Doesn't mean I should be doing all of those hats. Nobody's going to do any of those things well if you're spread too thin. I think, for those people listening that either are looking to venture into owning their own business or are currently in it and struggling, you have to have a good team of people with you. You cannot.
Absolutely.
Unless your business is unique,
You're a one-man show.
Yeah. I mean, my hairdresser has it great. She builds her own schedule. She doesn't have an assistant. She just does her own thing. And sometimes I'm jealous to watch that, But unless you have a business that's like that, you need a lot of good people surrounding you.
And I think one of the things that, and I'm an avid reader. I love to read and trying to improve myself all the time. And one of the things was that first year, we were struggling mightily. Like, we didn't even know that we were going to be able to pull it off towards the end of that first year because we were, basically at each other.
We didn't know if we would still be married at the end.
It was that much fun, right?
There's a lot of up and downs. I can
There
tell you that.
There are. And one of the books we read, and it was recommended by a coach at the time at Keller Williams, and it was a great book. It was called Rocket Fuel. And it basically, I automatically thought, I know Kristin. I've been with her for a long time. We know each other. But when you go into a different role, the dynamics change. And the Rocket Fuel book helped me understand who she was relative to my skill set. And I realized at that juncture, I had totally dropped the ball in terms of understanding the dynamic together. And that was really a turning point for us in our business. And as she started to, acclimate to our business, then she started her new venture. So we started all over again through that
back
path.
at square one. Are we going to make it through this year? When those tough times come, it is you have to wait it out and stick it out to really see. It's really easy to be like, I want to, and there have been times I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to quit. Like, why did I think I could do all of this, But then what's the option?
Right.
What is your alternative?
Failure's not an option, right?
There's not,
right.
But to keep going. When I was dancing, when I was competing a lot and I would start to get frustrated that I wasn't, placing or making the progress I wanted to, I would say, I'm done. I can't, I'm not doing this anymore. And my coach would say, well, what are you going to do? You're going to go home every night and watch TV, drink beer? And I'm like, oh my God, that would be awful. For me,
right.
that's for some people, they love that. That's great. But for me, that's not what lights me up,
Right. It's not your personality.
And so I'm like, okay, you're right. I have to keep going, and I wouldn't be where I'm sitting right now, having opened a studio, had I at that point quit.
Now, when you were dancing, were you traveling all across the world or United States, or where were you?
Yeah, we traveled everywhere. And that was tough on Robert too.
That's what I was going to ask. Was that tough? Because now that you were gone doing that, so
yeah. And at the time, that was more fun. That was before I got into it as a business. So it cost money to travel and to compete. But that was my doorway into getting into the business, was for me to prove myself as a dancer, to get my titles. I was a United States champion. I had to work that in order to get into the business. For me, that was my path. But it was hard. Every month, almost every month, I was traveling. Sometimes it was locally in Florida. Sometimes it was, we went to New Orleans and Las Vegas, and so that was tough. And I'm dancing with a bunch of Latin guys. And
yeah, how'd you handle that one? I was wondering about that.
Everyone always said that. Everyone who knows me knows that my catchphrase, because everyone would invariably ask, "Hey, where's Kristin?" I said, "Oh, she's dancing with Latin men. and it was a true statement.
Right.
And,
They were like, what?
Obviously I'm very comfortable with myself and there is a
Well,
degree
and let's
of...
face it, real estate you're surrounded by beautiful women all the time, especially, Robert somehow.
Yeah, that's not terrible. I love you, team. Yeah. Hey, and that's true. We're very comfortable in that way.
Yeah, we trust each other.
We trust each other there, so it really doesn't matter in that sense of the word or that sense of the meaning. But to say it was challenging is an understatement because
it was more the time away from home
that
was
that
difficult.
was the challenge.
Because when I was away, suddenly, and at the time he was not. He was, like you said, working, pushing. And so he didn't have the things helping around the house. Those were not part of his daily function. So when I left, it was like...
It's on you.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean,
totally
I can remember getting the phone calls like, I can't find his soccer cleats. Where'd you put them? And it was almost like he'd be mad at me. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like thousands of miles away right now. Like,
what do you mean I have to be responsible?
Yeah.
What is this?
I know.
But
It's right in front of your face. And Debbie, I do the same thing, and Debbie would be like, dude, it's right there. I'm like, how did I even miss that?
I'd be like, walk to the closet, open the closet. There's a shelf to the left at the top. Next to the blue bin, or
You
very
sound just like
specific,
me. You sound just like me.
Yeah,
It's
regrettably, this still happens today. I'm learning every
me
day,
too.
but I
think we'd be lost without him.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that is the truth. But now I'm having to learn some of these things myself, and now maybe just maybe some of the times she calls me an S. So.
That is true. I have started
wow.
to become like Robert in certain sense of the
role
word.
reveal still here.
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's funny because as I've taken this business now, I have started to let go a little bit and not feel responsible. He's a grown man, and my son is 16.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not
I mean
mentally.
that's debatable.
I take that as a compliment.
But and my son is 16 now,
Right.
and so I started to realize, like, even with my 16-year-old, like, well, gosh, he's asking me. I mean, he asked me, how to wash his face at one point. This was years ago, but I'm thinking, okay, we've got some work to do if he's going to make it on his own, and we're asking step-by-step things like this, So part of that was my fault for not holding them accountable and responsible for their own stuff, I think as wives and mothers, sometimes we want to, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, I do it. I still do it, but I want to take care,
Oh, yeah.
That's
just a motherly thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Debbie's the same way.
Yeah.
You can ask Bryce.
Yeah. But, at some point, for everything to work right, everybody has to be responsible for their own stuff. And at the end of the day, I am,
Right.
I can't suddenly, most of the time if I were to call Robert and ask him where my deodorant is, which is a question I got for years, where their deodorant was. And I'm like, how would I know where your stuff is?
These are really simple questions.
Sorry, right. I don't know.
I don't want to, step in here for a second, but
if I were to ask the same questions, if we were to reverse the roles, he'd be like, why are you asking me? So it's funny. I mean, and that gets into a whole other issues of like the concepts that we have about, relationships, the roles that we play in those relationships as men and women, that could be a whole nother subject, but but those were things that we struggled with, when you have two people, kind of trying to run businesses hard, that there's no balancing out. Right. We have another couple that we're friends with, and she for years stayed home with the kids, and then she works now, but she still is able to balance the kids, and they have a very rich life. But they took on a little bit more traditional roles. And sometimes we look at that and think, that might have been a lot simpler, It just wasn't in my personality, I guess, to take that path, and everybody's different, There's no good, bad, or one is better than the other, but this was the path that we took. And so this is where we're at.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I mean, the thing is, like, what I always try to, and this is part of the reason I started the podcast, is because so many people are out there and so many people have these dreams or these ideas of what they want to do, and they just don't know how to go after it, or they're scared to go after it, or they're just like,
or they don't know where to start.
Where to start, right? And it's like, it's like when I started this podcast, I never did a podcast. I don't know how to do a podcast. I was like, what is this? I was like, but I wanted to do one. I was like, I'll figure it out as I go. And then over the months, where I'm coming up to almost a year now, and it just, you kind of get better at it, and you kind of learn different things and how to do different things. And it's the same thing with the business, right? I think what we miss is most people get very just subdued into their everyday life, and they don't want to go after. They have these dreams, or they want this, but they just don't know how to do it, or they're scared to do it. And the thing is like, if you could figure out how to make it work, and I always say, like, look, if you have to keep doing your 9 to 5 and you do something at night, or you do it on the weekends, or whatever your passion is, and then kind of figure out how to make it your life. And so, this is kind of, you started out with dancing. That's why I think this was a good podcast for this. You started out with dancing, and then you built it, and then you got really good at it. And then now all of a sudden you have your own business in it. Because you can say, I've been there, I've done that. I've done the tours, I've done all this stuff, and then you can sit there and say, I got my real estate business to a certain point. Now I got my team to a certain point. And so, like, it's just one of those things that you guys can look at and look back on and say, we did it. And was it easy? It's never easy. I mean, well,
and for years I wanted to do something, and that restlessness, I'm sure listeners can relate to this. The people that want to start something, there's like a restlessness in you, like, gosh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what direction to go. But my best advice is to find people who have done it, who are doing it, and to talk to them, and to maybe give you a starting point. Just accept the fact that you're going to be putting in long hours, and that whatever you create is not the end. I mean, I used to think that starting a business, like whatever I started, that was going to be it. Rest of my life, I have this business. That's it. That's what I created. That's what I'm going to stay with. Now I'm surrounded by people who, some of them owned studios at one point in time. Now they have several studios, and they're not even working in their studios, and they're doing other things that they enjoyed doing, probably similar to your podcast, or, some of them are in real estate, investing in real estate and doing those things. So wherever you start is not the end. It's all about creating, really. If you're just going in it just to make money, that might be where you start, but it's generally not where people end in the whole scope of things. There's something more driving them than just the making of the money.
I think in a lot of ways you got to look at it from the standpoint is it can't be about money. It can't always be about money. Money's like the end game to it. But if it's something that drives you, it's like it's whatever that passion is or that drives you. Yeah, the money might be the end game, and hopefully you can make money from it, right? But the thing is if you're doing what you love, you're going to make money from it, or whatever it is, right? If that's what the drive is, you just need to let it get there. Even in the mortgage business, I love doing mortgages. I love helping, which is a little difficult right now, first-time home buyers, because I love helping first-time home buyers.
They're like the redheaded stepsister right now, right?
It's like and I love helping them, but unfortunately, the market's just not wanting to be very friendly to them right now. But it's just something about when you go to a closing and you got a first-time home buyer sitting across from you. It's very unique, and it's very different than somebody who's bought multiple homes. Sure. Because they've been it. They've done that, right? But a first-time home buyer is sitting there, and they just got that American dream of owning an own home. It's their first house. You can just see their face light up, and they're just excited about getting the keys. They can't wait to move in, and it's just something about that. And that's really drives me more than any other types of deals that I do. Just because of that, and that was one of the things that I loved. And I love counseling people and helping them get to buy their house. A lot of times I get people telling me, they'll sit there and say, I talked to this loan officer and they basically said I couldn't do anything and then let me go. And I'm like, oh no, that's not how I work. You know, we're going to figure out a way to make it work. And if I can't help you right this second, I'm going to help you get there in 6 months, or I'm going to help you get you there in a year.
Tell them what they have to do
and tell them and explain to them and coach them on how to get there. Because that's what I love, right? When I have somebody who comes back to me in 6 months and they were able to buy that house, or a year and able to buy that house, and now they have something that they own and they're happy, and because they worked hard to get there, that's it's better than the money, because the money's there, it's great, and there's a lot of stress and of what we do, but you got to find something that's more than the money.
Yeah, and when I first started the business, and this obviously wasn't very long ago, it was back in August, I wanted a pat on the back that I was doing a good job, tell me I'm doing a good job,
Right.
And it really, nobody's going to tell you you're doing a good job. And when you're doing it yourself and on your own, I mean, maybe people from the outside looking in that maybe don't know all of what's happening, they might say, oh, you're doing a good job, you're running a business. But your role suddenly becomes lifting others up to their success, which I did not fully. I have been there before in my other jobs, even working for the law firm, making sure people knew what to do to make the business successful. But this was in a different way. Mm-hmm. This was taking people that were trying to establish their own careers. And there was something exhausting and rewarding about that all at the same time. If you're a leader, really the kudos is going to go to your people. It's not going to go to you. You will get some recognition amongst your peers who are
Right.
understand the game, so to speak. But most of the public appreciation is really meant for your team.
And the people you do. So I got a question for you, Robert, because one of the things that it wasn't probably within the last year I found out that because I never knew you were an attorney, and you went to law school. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, how you decided you were going to be an attorney, then all of a sudden you decided you wanted to get into real estate. So tell me a little bit about why you decided you didn't want to do that anymore, and then has it helped you in real estate?
Oh yeah, I loved the idea of being an attorney, and that was probably fairly ego-driven at the time. And I said, "Oh, well, my dad's an attorney. Well, I'll just become an attorney." And there's a kind of a feeling of accomplishment being an attorney. But what I discovered was that I love the study of law. And to a certain degree, I really love the practice of law. But what I didn't love was sitting behind a desk all day. That was not me. No. I mean, even right here, if you haven't noticed, my hands are moving, and I'm like, my feet are running 100 miles an hour. I can't sit
even
still.
Even at home, it's like pacing.
I can't. Yeah, I'm like, building the Taj Mahal in my backyard. I just need to do something, and I have a hard time sitting still, and that's the energy that comes with it. Not that you can't have that with the law, but the law was, to a certain degree, incompatible with who I was.
Right.
And again,
too much paperwork.
Yeah, too much paperwork, and I like to do this. This is like, I could say, oh, I could get used to this podcast thing, and this is a lot of fun. But also the other aspect of things that is kind of lost. I may still be practicing law today if it wasn't for I had a bout with alcoholism, and that was something. Being an attorney and the stress associated with that, developing the habit of drinking all the time to kind of slow my mind down, because I'm always going like 100 miles an hour. So the way I could slow my mind down to a certain degree was alcohol. Okay. And so I had a real struggle with that, and it was like to the point at which it was affecting our marriage. In fact, we separated for a while because I was so unhinged. I was a functional alcoholic. I'd work all day and then I'd come home and drink, which was not the optimal situation.
I mean, that was during the time I was doing everything at home.
Right.
And I was working my own full-time job.
So yeah,
it
was tough, but eventually when I went out on my own, I looked at that as a opportunity to reinvent myself, and it took some time. It was very, very challenging. I still think of beer bottles going over a fence at night. I just, that'll never, ever be gone. And I've got that addictive aspect of me, but I've disciplined myself not to drink. And that has been exceptionally challenging. And that drinking was very incompatible with the law, at least in my mind. It just didn't make me effective in the long term. And really, if I wasn't drinking, I'd probably still be practicing law. So that changed the trajectory. In fact, my dad was like, he saw me and he's like, Bobby, what, you look horrible. And at the time I was 220 pounds. I'm 190 now. And I was a mess. I mean, I remember going into the doctor's office, and the doctor looked at all my numbers and it says, if you don't change, you'll be dead in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
That's how bad, because I was.
You never told me that.
Yeah, well, that was actually what changed my
these
trajectory.
podcasts open up
yeah,
things, don't
yeah,
they?
I know. I didn't know this was going to be a therapy session here. So that was the turning point. And I always tell the doctor now, I said, hey, you saved my life. Because, it scared the bejesus out of me. Mm-hmm. And that was a big turning point, obviously, in conjunction with the fact that our relationship was suffering as a result. And I knew at that time I wanted her back. And I had lost her because I had broken that promise to her that I was going to be there for her. And I was really only there for myself because I was subsumed in my own pity and wallowing in my lot in life. But as with anything, and to the point here, and I think you'll see that this is indicative of this conversation from you and from us, is the struggle is real, right? Mm-hmm. Not only is it the struggle real, but you have to make sure you're going in the right direction, because if you're struggling and going in the wrong direction, that's no good either. So you have to understand where you're going and then endure the struggle. And sometimes we go in the wrong path, and then it's red light, green light, right? Okay. I'm struggling, it's not going, so I have to shift gears and go another direction. So, and that's essentially what we did when we moved down here. I knew in my heart of hearts that I really wanted to be baking cookies. I knew that was the calling for me. Me and Otis
That's exactly
Spunkmeyer,
what he said.
It was exactly what I said.
He was substitute teaching when we first moved down here.
Oh, jeez.
We had our son was a year old. So here we come trekking down, and, his father says, come down, you can use your law, get into real estate. Real estate's booming here, right? Yeah. This was
2007.
The end of 2006, beginning of 2007.
Wow.
Get a house. You better get a house now because prices are just going to continue to go up, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We bought a house in the height of the market. And literally, within 30 days, everything crashed. From buying a house to getting into a career, in real estate. But, I watched Rob go through that, even with the drinking and all, he still was able, he was obviously good at what he was doing because, he was succeeding in that market when everything just crashed, when real estate agents were bailing. They were gone. They were getting out. This is terrible. So then when things got good, all of that, working hard, there were a lot of agents we had been told that got out of it because before that, the money was easy.
Oh, yeah.
Because the market was so great. That Robert really had to work very hard to get what he got. So when the market got good, he continued with that level of service to his customers. And that's, and they always told us the cream rises to the top. So that actually ended up benefiting him, what he went through, in his career in the long term. So all these struggles, all those things, They
always, and that's the thing, is I think sometimes we have to go through those struggles to get to where we are, because it actually, I think you need to almost struggle to be better, because you understand it better. If you just went straight to the top, well, you're just used to being there. You haven't been through the struggles. Mm-hmm. And, that's the thing that I think some people miss. I think you have to have that, because I've been through struggles, you've been through struggles, you guys are going through struggles. So On a final note, anything that you would tell our listeners, something positive or something that's really helps you?
I would ask yourself what person you need to become to do what it is you want to do to achieve your dreams.
Yeah, and for me, you know, the thing that runs through me constantly is no matter what you do, you have to have fun. And you know me, I'm always laughing, I'm giggling, I have to have that element of fun. And then of course, and it is worth noting, and I've said this before about you, and you've been an inspiration to me, and I know this is probably a shy moment, but I look up to you in that way, because when you first started out, you know, I remember you coming into my office, and it was so, you were like, just give me a shot. I mean, that was literally the words you said, and you weren't even facing me like that. That's what I remember. Right. It was so hard to have that conversation. You were the new kid on block. There was 8,000 mortgage people, and here you're coming in, and you said that to me, and I remember at that moment, I said, okay, I see that. I'm going to give him a shot, and then you were in front of like tons of people at the KW, what is it, Bold, right? Oh, and you would sit up there, and I knew that was hard for you because that wasn't inherently who you were.
I was a lot like Kristin. I was very introverted. I mean, so I was like, you know, and I've grown a lot in the last 5-6 years.
It's been fun to watch, and that's who I want to be surrounded with, is people that are striving to be better, that can help me become better, because I have so much improvement to make in my own life, and I'm humble that way, is never letting ego get in the way. We all do to a certain extent. But I always try to check myself with that, and
have a sense of humor.
Have a sense of humor. And if without my sense of humor, I'd be, I don't know what I do, but this is, I don't know what I do. And
we had this one day on a last story note. We had this one day where everything was going wrong. This morning, just one thing after the other. And Robert walks in, he had gone out to the car to leave for the day, and walked back in and was holding a piece of the car.
A piece of the car?
A piece of the car.
Okay.
And he walks in and he goes, I just hit your car in the driveway.
Oh my God.
Right? And so in a moment where I could have been like, what? Da, 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 I said, okay, just set it down. Add it to the list, you know? So, I mean, like, you just have to, like, just laugh at some point at the ridiculousness of when things are going bad. Just know you're going to get through it, you know?
Well, I appreciate you guys coming out. It's been fun.
This has been awesome. I really, really, really enjoyed this. So,
this was good.
Yeah.
See, this is what I love about it, because the thing is like it's a whole different level of learning about people.
Sure.
And you know, most people, you don't get to sit down and have these types of conversation,
awesome.
Right?
This is great.
Where there's no distractions.
There's no phones. There's no nothing. And this is why I got into this, is because I just want to learn about people. I want to learn how they got there.
That's awesome, man.
And you know,
really cool.
and really have people share their stories. So I appreciate it.
Really
Hey,
cool.
thank you for having us.
Yeah,
This
thank
has been
you
a
for having
blast.
us. This has been fun.
All right. Thanks, guys.